we're going to move on to a different type of football, and that is the USFL. The USFL is a league that has been started with a lot of former NFL players, former NFL and college coaches. There's some pretty decently sized names. A lot of them are, kickbacks from the old XFL that had, gone defunct a couple of years ago. What was the other league they had that did pretty well, but COVID kind of took them down? What was that league?
It's like the UFL or something.
The UFL, something like that, yeah. So what we've done, the USFL is trying some really cool rule changes. I'm going to kind of just review these really quick, and then we're going to talk about which ones you like, which ones are cool, which ones you think maybe the NFL should adopt. So the first one is after a touchdown, your team can opt for a 1-point, 2-point, or 3-point try after the touchdown. So your PAT, it could be worth 1, 2, or 3 points. For 1 point, you kick the ball from a 15-yard line, which is similar to what we have now for extra point. For 2 points, you can start an offensive play and run the offensive play from the 2-yard line. That is a little different. What is is it 3-yard line or 4-yard line in the NFL?
I think it's 3.
3, yeah.
It's something. It's something. It might be in the middle somewhere. There's a line there that I should know that, but I don't. But you can go for a 3-point try by running an offensive play from the 10-yard line. That's kind of interesting to me. I think it's kind of cool when you have a wrinkle like that thrown in that's a little different than what you normally would see. It makes it more interesting, and I think that's kind of what the USFL is trying to do to get people to watch. They do have an alternative to an onside kick as well. So for an onside kick, I think you can go for it. Is it 4th and 12 from your own 33-yard line? If you get it, then you get to keep the ball. Is that correct?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't get it, the other team keeps the ball where the play started, right?
Yep.
All right, yeah. And then in the Pro Bowl, the NFL did a 4th and 15 from their own 25 to kind of, give you a little bit of comparison there in the Pro Bowl. In terms of clock stoppages, the clock stops following a first down during the final 2 minutes of the second and fourth quarter. I love this. I think that is awesome. So after the 2-minute warning, every time you get a first down, the clock's going to stop. Now, let me ask you all this. Does it restart when the ball is set, or does it just stop completely?
That I think it's just a dead ball, like completely stops from my understanding, but I don't know.
Okay, because like in high school, when you get a first down, anytime the clock stops until the ball is set, until the chains get set.
Yeah.
But if it stops completely, kind of like a run out of bounds or something like that, that makes things a lot more interesting late in games, especially close games.
Yeah.
In overtime, we have a shootout. The best of 3 with the ball at the 2-yard line. And then at the end, it's sudden death if tied. What I love about this is there are no ties.
Yeah.
The fact that you can tie in an NFL game is stupid. I don't understand it. To have a kickoff or something, like put them at the 50, like a shootout in hockey. Just let them kick. That gives you your kicker even more value. But they're also on this. You can have a second forward pass, so you can throw it behind the line of scrimmage, forward twice, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And in those plays, there cannot be a pass interference or an ineligible receiver downfield on passes that happen behind the line of scrimmage. So that's kind of really new to me. I've not heard of that happening before. I guess what you could have was like maybe a couple of throwback passes across the field, or, one of those pitches forward and a pitch backwards, and then another, a lot of trick plays can happen. I guess that takes care of that.
Yeah, I think you can see lineman screens with this rule. You can start seeing, awesome, because there's no ineligible receiver behind the line of scrimmage. Robert Hunt's touchdown for Miami would have counted in the USFL.
Yeah. That's one of our plays of the year in our NFL award show.
Yep.
So what do you guys think of these rules? What's your favorite one? I've already talked about my favorite. My favorite one is the clock stoppage. And I like the no tie game. That's obvious. But I do like the clock stoppages within the final 2 minutes of the second and fourth quarter. What's your all's favorites?
I like the alternative to onside kick because they are just so low percentage right now. I think this gives you maybe a 20% chance at getting that ball back instead of what is, I don't even know the average right now of recovering an onside kick in the NFL. But it seems super low. I also think it plays into player safety. we know kickoffs are extremely dangerous. Players running open field, high speed. So I really like that. I do not like this 3-point try at all. This makes a touchdown worth potentially 9 points, and it is going to render your kickers less valuable, right? You have to have 3 field goal possessions now to make up for one of these touchdowns with a 3-point try. I don't like that.
I'm going to go the complete opposite and say I love the 3-point try. I'm a big fantasy football guy, and I have joined a few leagues the past few years where kickers have been obsolete. And I think that might just be a trend in fantasy sports where kickers you don't even play them. You don't even have them on a roster spot. And being fantasy minded, I love points. I mean, in our fantasy football league, me and Coop jacked with the point system, and we, the big scoring games are 500. We've seen,
Yep.
I think we've seen an elusive 600-point game. So if you're telling me I can get more points at fantasy football with a 3-point try, I am all for it. Give it to me. Give me those points. But at the same point, you're going to get no game is out of reach unless it's an absolute blowout. I mean, 9 points. I mean, how many games? I don't know the stat, but I'm saying how many games finished, 10 points or less. It makes it way more interesting to watch.
Yeah,
and it leaves your coaching staff with big decisions to make early on in the game. Like, if you want to go for it, I think the 2-point play is kind of normal. You see more 2-point plays now going on in the NFL. People go for 2 all the time, just like they're going for it on 4th down way more often. I think the leeway and the kind of the negative connotation behind going for it, especially early in a game, it's kind of out the window now. I think this is going to, push that more toward, the more aggressive part of game planning. But if you're scoring the first couple of touchdowns and you decide to go for the 3-point play and you don't get it, all of a sudden now you have 12 points instead of, that's 2 possessions, and your other team can come in, score a touchdown, get that 3-point play, and all of a sudden it's a 1-score game. And they've only had 1 possession and you've had 2, and you've scored on every possession. Yeah. So I do think it does make it interesting. It does. I do agree with Coop and say that it makes the kickers obsolete and it makes all that happen. But in the grand scheme of things, I think you're still going to see more extra points because they're just guaranteed at that point. A play from the 10-yard line is kind of hard. There's not a lot of room to work with.
Actually, I was going to ask you guys that. You all play football. I didn't. If you were on defense, would it be easier to stop them at the 2-yard line? So basically they only have 12 yards to work with to score, or stop them from the 10-yard line where those receivers have 20 yards to play with?
I think it depends on what kind of offensive team you're playing. If you got Derrick Henry in the backfield, I'm going for 2 every play. Because you're at the 2-yard line, I'm betting that I can get 2 yards with him than anybody else. But if you're a team that has, I don't know, some shifty wide receivers, a lot of good slot guys that you can get open, like a Cooper Kupp. I know we're not talking about the NFL, but I'm just kind of making those comparisons in terms of how I would use them in this format of scoring. I do think that you would be more apt to go for the 3-point play if you had those types of players on your team. I think it's harder to score from 10 yards out because you can't run the ball more than likely. It's going to be a pass, so the defense knows they're going to have to play pass. I do think there's not a lot of room to get separation. You're going to have to be able to throw in tight windows. That's why whenever they get down inside the 20, I would take chances when you're, the 15 to 20-yard line. That's your take a chance to the end zone. When you're closer up, it's kind of hard to get separation. You go for all the fade routes, but there's very few guys that I would trust throwing a fade route to. But I would say scoring from the 10-yard line is more difficult, which is kind of why they probably put the 3-point play on there. Mm-hmm. The 10 is that's a iffy yardage right there because you can still run the ball 10 yards on certain plays.
Oh, no, I think 10 is definitely harder. And that we see it, in the NFL. In high school, definitely. Give me a play from 10. There's not a lot of quarterbacks that are beating me 10 yards out. And if, there is a gap that opens up, we've got 10 yards to recover from it. Mm-hmm. In the NFL, that's why you have red zone targets, right? Like Frank said, there's no separation. Those little guys aren't scoring short touchdowns. It's Mike Evans at 6'5". It's Gronk at 6'6". The ball's going up. So, yeah, give me a jump ball from 10 yards out. I would rather defend that than have to worry about a Derrick Henry from 2.
And if you're at the 2-yard line, you've got play action plays. You've got all those like Philly special trick plays, and you've got quick screens, quick slants, fade routes.
Yep.
There's so many more things that you have to do from 2 yards that you have an option to do for 2 yards. So offensive minded people, there's so many things to pick from that you can still be successful with. When you're going in from the 10, it's throw.
Yeah.
I think it's harder because defenses know that.
Yeah.
Yep.
One thing I need to research more is I wonder how they're going to handle like pass interference calls, because I could see where teams would say, hey, we're going to go for 10, but we're going to try and draw a penalty so that it goes, I know in the NFL it's a spot foul. So if it happens in the end zone, they get a 3-point try from the 1-yard line. If they get it, I don't know how they're going to do that, but it's an interesting thing to look into.
I do think they've addressed their pass interference penalties, haven't they?
It's 15 yards. It's no longer a spot foul.
But there's a certain situation in which it is a spot foul, I think, isn't there?
If it's like an intentional tackle of a receiver.
Right, so you can't just tackle the guy.
Yeah, it's got to be a play on the ball.
So then it would be half a distance to the goal line. So it'd still be, so you're still saying you'd go from 10 to 5 if that's
that really makes it difficult.